Maya Jenkins had always been the invisible girl. She moved through the hallways of Lincoln High like a shadow, her dark eyes focused on the worn linoleum beneath her feet, her books clutched tightly against her chest like armor. For 3 years, she had perfected the art of being overlooked, finding solace in the corners of classrooms and the back rows of the cafeteria. Her silence wasn't born from shyness alone, it was a protective shield she had built after years of being different in a world that celebrated conformity. The bathroom incident started like any other Tuesday. Maya had excused herself from Mr. Peterson's history class, grateful for a moment of respite from the suffocating atmosphere of forced participation and judgmental stares. The second-floor bathroom was usually empty during third period, making it her sanctuary, a place where she could breathe without feeling the weight of everyone's expectations pressing down on her shoulders. But today was different. As Maya pushed open the heavy door, she heard voices echoing off the tiled walls. Her heart sank as she recognized the familiar cruel laughter of Brittany Morrison and her followers. Brittany was everything Maya wasn't: loud, confident, popular, and seemingly untouchable. She ruled the school's social hierarchy with an iron fist wrapped in designer clothes and a perfect smile that never reached her eyes when she looked at people like Maya. Maya tried to back out quietly, but it was too late. Brittany's sharp voice cut through the air like a blade. Well. Look what we have here. The little mouse finally came out of her hole. The other girls giggled on cue, their laughter bouncing off the walls and creating an echo chamber of mockery that made Maya's stomach churn with familiar dread. Maya's fingers tightened around her books as she attempted to move toward the exit, but Brittany stepped directly into her path, her perfectly manicured hands slamming against the door frame. Where do you think you're going? We haven't had a chance to chat in so long. The word chat dripped with false sweetness that made Maya's skin crawl. I need to get back to class, Maya whispered, her voice barely audible above the humming of the fluorescent lights overhead. She kept her eyes fixed on the floor, watching as Brittany's expensive sneakers moved closer, invading her personal space with deliberate intimidation. Oh, come on, Maya. Don't be such a bore. We just want to know, who's your boss now, huh? Brittany's voice rose to a mocking shout as she grabbed Maya's arm, her grip tight enough to leave marks. The other girls formed a semicircle around them, effectively trapping Maya against the cold tile wall. Their phones appeared as if by magic, cameras ready to capture whatever humiliation Brittany had planned. The question hung in the air like poison. Maya knew what Brittany wanted: submission, fear, entertainment at her expense. For 3 years, she had given in to bullies like Brittany, allowing their cruelty to wash over her while she waited for it to end. She had convinced herself that silence was strength, that enduring was surviving. But something had changed in Maya over the past few months, something that even she hadn't fully recognized until this moment. Maya's transformation had begun slowly, almost imperceptibly. It started with small acts of self-discovery, joining the school's debate club as a silent observer, spending hours in the library reading about civil rights leaders who had found their voices in the face of oppression, and gradually beginning to see her own reflection not as someone broken, but as someone powerful in ways she had never imagined. As Brittany's grip tightened and her voice grew more demanding, Maya felt something shift inside her chest. It was like a door that had been locked for years suddenly creaking open, letting light flood into spaces that had been dark for too long. She raised her head slowly, her dark eyes meeting Brittany's blue ones with a steadiness that surprised them both. My boss? Maya repeated, her voice gaining strength with each word. I don't have a boss, Brittany. I have teachers, parents, and people I respect. But you? You're none of those things. The words came out clear and steady, carrying a weight that seemed to change the very atmosphere of the room. Brittany's confident smirk faltered for just a moment, but she quickly recovered, squeezing Maya's arm harder. Excuse me? Did the little mouse just squeak back at me? I think you forgot who runs this school. Her followers murmured agreement, but their voices lacked their usual conviction. Something in Maya's demeanor had shifted the dynamic in ways they weren't prepared for. Maya gently but firmly removed Brittany's hand from her arm, her movements deliberate and controlled. "You know what I've realized, Brittany? You don't run anything except your mouth. All this time, I thought you had some kind of power over me, but the truth is, you're just scared." Maya's voice grew stronger with each revelation, as if speaking these truths aloud was feeding her courage. "Scared? Of what?" Brittany scoffed, but there was uncertainty creeping into her voice now. The other girls exchanged glances, their phones lowering slightly as they sensed the shift in power dynamics happening before their eyes. Maya stepped forward, no longer pressing herself against the wall in retreat. "You're scared that without putting other people down, you have nothing interesting to say. You're scared that your friends only stick around because they're afraid of becoming your next target. You're scared that underneath all that makeup and attitude, you're just as insecure as everyone else." Each word landed like a precisely aimed arrow, hitting targets that Brittany had spent years trying to protect. The silence that followed was deafening. Maya could see the truth of her words reflecting in Brittany's eyes, in the way her shoulders tensed and her perfect composure began to crack. But Maya wasn't finished. Years of swallowed words and suppressed feelings were finally finding their voice, and she couldn't stop them now even if she wanted to. "You want to know who my boss is? I'll tell you. My boss is my conscience, which tells me not to treat people the way you treat them. My boss is my self-respect, which won't let me participate in tearing others down to build myself up. My boss is my future self, who will be proud that I stood up for what's right instead of staying silent when I could have made a difference." Maya's words were like stones thrown into still water, creating ripples that spread throughout the small bathroom. One of Brittany's followers, Jessica, slowly lowered her phone completely and took a small step back. Another girl, Sarah, was looking at Maya with something that might have been admiration growing in her eyes. Brittany, however, wasn't ready to surrender her perceived authority. Her face flushed with anger and embarrassment as she realized her usual tactics weren't working. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think one little speech is going to change anything? Tomorrow, everyone will still know exactly who you are, a nobody who doesn't matter." Maya nodded thoughtfully, as if considering Brittany's words seriously. "You might be right. Maybe tomorrow some people will still see me as a nobody. But the difference is, I'll know who I really am. I'll know that I'm someone who stands up for herself and others. I'll know that I'm someone who chooses kindness over cruelty, courage over cowardice. Can you say the same about yourself?" The question hung in the air between them like a challenge that couldn't be ignored. Maya could see the internal struggle playing out on Brittany's face, the war between the persona she had created and the person she might have been underneath all the armor of aggression and false superiority. "And you know what else?" Maya continued, her voice now carrying a confidence that seemed to emanate from her very core. "I'm done being afraid of people like you. I'm done letting your insecurities become my prison. From now on, when I see you picking on someone who can't defend themselves, I'm going to speak up. When I hear you spreading rumors or lies, I'm going to tell the truth. Your reign of terror is over, at least where I'm concerned." Maya gathered her books and walked toward the door, but she paused with her hand on the handle. "Oh, and Brittany? If you ever want to have a real conversation, not this performance you put on for your audience, but an actual human conversation, I'll be in the library during lunch. That's where people go when they want to learn something instead of just tearing others down." As Maya opened the door to leave, she heard Jessica's voice behind her, quiet but clear, "Maya, wait." Maya turned back to see the girl who had been recording everything looking uncertain and almost ashamed. I'm sorry. This isn't right. This has never been right." Maya nodded at Jessica with understanding rather than judgment. "It takes courage to recognize that. Thank you for saying so." She looked at each of the girls in turn, her gaze steady and compassionate. "You all have the power to choose who you want to be. I hope you choose to be better than this." As Maya walked back down the hallway toward her classroom, she felt something she had never experienced before, not just relief or satisfaction, but a profound sense of her own power. Not power over others, but power over herself, her choices, and her destiny. The girl who had entered that bathroom was not the same person who had walked out. The ripple effects of that bathroom confrontation spread through Lincoln High like wildfire. By the end of the day, the story had traveled through text messages, whispered conversations, and social media posts. But this wasn't the usual tale of humiliation and defeat that typically followed Brittany's encounters with her victims. Instead, students were talking about Maya's courage, her dignity, and the way she had transformed a moment of intended cruelty into a lesson in self-respect and human decency. Jessica, true to the doubt Maya had seen in her eyes, was the first to approach Maya the next day during lunch. She found Maya in the library, exactly where she had said she would be, reading quietly in a corner surrounded by books on social justice and leadership. "Can I sit here?" Jessica asked, her voice small and uncertain. Maya looked up and smiled, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. "Of course. I'm glad you came." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment before Jessica spoke again. "I've been thinking about what you said yesterday. About choosing who we want to be." Jessica's words came slowly, as if she was testing each one before speaking it aloud. "I don't think I like who I've been choosing to be." Maya closed her book and gave Jessica her full attention. "The beautiful thing about choice is that you can make a different one at any moment. Yesterday doesn't have to define today, and today doesn't have to define tomorrow." Over the following weeks, something remarkable began to happen at Lincoln High. Maya's act of courage had given permission to others to find their own voices. Students who had been silent observers of bullying began to speak up. Teachers noticed the change in classroom dynamics and started addressing issues they had previously overlooked. Even some of Brittany's former followers began to distance themselves from her toxic behavior, choosing instead to build friendships based on mutual respect rather than shared cruelty. Brittany herself seemed lost without her usual power structure. For a while, she became even more aggressive, lashing out at anyone within reach as she tried to regain her former influence. But without her followers' enthusiastic support and with an increasing number of students willing to challenge her behavior, her efforts fell flat. The ecosystem of fear she had created was crumbling, and she found herself isolated in ways she had never experienced before. Maya, meanwhile, continued to grow into her newfound confidence. She joined the debate team officially, became a peer mediator for student conflicts, and started a support group for students who had experienced bullying. Her transformation wasn't just personal, it was inspiring others to discover their own strength and voice. The most surprising development came 2 months after the bathroom incident. Maya was leaving her peer mediation session when she found Brittany waiting by her locker, alone and looking more vulnerable than Maya had ever seen her. Gone was the perfectly styled hair and designer outfit, replaced by simple jeans and a school sweatshirt. Her usual entourage was nowhere to be seen. "Maya, can we talk?" Brittany's voice was different, smaller, more human, stripped of its usual bravado and cruelty. Maya studied Brittany's face, looking for signs of deception or manipulation, but all she saw was genuine uncertainty and what might have been regret. "Sure. But not here in the hallway. Let's go somewhere private." They walked to an empty classroom, and Maya closed the door behind them. Brittany stood by the window, looking out at the parking lot as if gathering courage for whatever she wanted to say. "I've been thinking about what you said that day in the bathroom," Brittany began, still not looking directly at Maya. "About being scared. About not having anything interesting to say without putting people down." She turned around, and Maya was shocked to see tears in her eyes. "You were right. About all of it." Maya waited, giving Brittany the space to continue at her own pace. "I don't even remember when I became this person," Brittany continued, her voice breaking slightly. "It just seemed easier to be mean than to risk being hurt. If I was the one doing the hurting, then I was in control. But I'm not in control of anything, am I? I'm just lonely and angry and I don't know how to stop. Maya felt her heart soften as she recognized something she understood all too well, the pain of feeling powerless and afraid. It's never too late to stop, Brittany. But stopping isn't enough. You have to make amends. You have to choose to be better. I know, Brittany whispered. I've hurt so many people. Said such terrible things. How do I even begin to fix that? Maya walked over to stand beside Brittany by the window. You begin by admitting you were wrong, which you just did. Then you apologize to the people you've hurt, not because you expect forgiveness, but because they deserve to hear it. Then you do the work of becoming someone different, someone better. It's not easy, and it's not quick, but it's possible. They stood in silence for a moment, two girls who had been on opposite sides of a war finally seeing each other as human beings with their own struggles and pain. Maya, Brittany said softly, I'm sorry. For everything I did to you, everything I said about you, every time I made you feel small. You never deserved any of it. Maya turned to look at Brittany directly. Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know. She paused, considering her next words carefully. But I'm not the only person who deserves an apology. Brittany nodded, understanding the implication. I know. There are so many people. I don't even know if they'll listen to me. Some will, some won't, Maya said honestly. But that's their choice to make. Your job is just to be sincere and then prove through your actions that you mean what you say. Over the following months, Maya watched as Brittany began the long process of transformation. It wasn't smooth or easy, there were setbacks and moments when old patterns reasserted themselves. Some students refused to accept her apologies or give her a second chance, which Maya understood and respected. Forgiveness couldn't be demanded, only earned. But slowly, gradually, Brittany began to show who she could be when she wasn't motivated by fear and anger. She volunteered for community service projects, helped younger students with their homework, and even joined Maya's anti-bullying support group, not as a leader, but as someone working to understand and change harmful patterns of behavior. The transformation wasn't just individual, it was systemic. Lincoln High became a different kind of place, where students felt safer to be themselves and speak up for others. The culture of fear that had dominated the school for years was replaced by something healthier, though not perfect. There were still conflicts and problems, but they were addressed openly rather than allowed to fester in silence. Maya's story became legendary at Lincoln High, passed down from older students to newer ones as an example of how one person's courage could change everything. But Maya herself remained grounded, understanding that real change wasn't a single moment of bravery, it was a daily choice to stand up for what was right, to treat others with dignity, and to use her voice in service of justice rather than self-interest. As graduation approached, Maya reflected on how much her life had changed since that day in the bathroom. She had discovered that her quiet nature wasn't a weakness to be overcome, but a strength to be channeled. She had learned that true power came not from dominating others, but from lifting them up. Most importantly, she had found her voice, not just the volume to speak loudly when necessary, but the wisdom to know when her words could make a difference. The day before graduation, Maya found a letter in her locker with no signature, written in handwriting she didn't immediately recognize. Maya, I wanted you to know that watching you stand up to Brittany that day changed my life. I had been planning to hurt myself because I couldn't see any way out of the pain I was feeling. But seeing your courage reminded me that I had choices I hadn't considered. I got help instead. I'm still here because you showed me what real strength looks like. Thank you for saving my life without even knowing it. A friend. Maya held the letter with trembling hands, overwhelmed by the realization that her moment of courage had rippled out in ways she could never have imagined. She thought about all the silent students in schools everywhere, the ones who felt powerless and alone, and she made a promise to herself that her voice would continue to speak for them long after she left Lincoln High. During her graduation speech as valedictorian, a position she had earned not just through academic excellence but through the respect of her peers, Maya spoke about the power of finding your voice and using it responsibly. She talked about how change begins with individual choices but spreads through communities when people choose courage over comfort, truth over convenience, and compassion over cruelty. We all have a choice, Maya told her classmates and their families, her voice clear and strong. We can be bystanders to injustice, participants in cruelty, or champions of change. The choice we make defines not just who we are, but who we help others become. Choose wisely, choose bravely, and choose with love. As the crowd erupted in applause, Maya looked out at her classmates, including Brittany, who was wiping tears from her eyes, and felt profoundly grateful for that terrifying moment in the bathroom that had taught her the most important lesson of her life, that true strength comes not from never being afraid, but from acting with courage in spite of fear. Maya Jenkins, the quiet girl who had found her voice, was ready to change the world one brave conversation at a time. If this story touched your heart and inspired you to think about the power of courage and compassion, please share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever witnessed or experienced a moment where someone's bravery changed everything? We'd love to hear your story. Don't forget to like this video if it resonated with you, share it with someone who might need to hear this message, and subscribe to Heartfelt Tales for more inspiring stories about real people making a real difference. Remember, every voice matters, including yours. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next story.